My name is Dallas Knight. I am the Vice President of Client Success and Channel at Blue Light, overseeing all of our accounts from the beginning stages well past the point of sale, ensuring your success. I am also a combat veteran, and I have an extensive background as an intelligence analyst, primarily in the law enforcement realm. And so if you're unfamiliar with Blue Light, I can pretty much summarize our organization with 3 words, and that is experience, cleared, and innovative. Experience, because almost our entire staff is comprised of prior law enforcement, military, intelligence analysts, or a combination of those. We are cleared, being that we do a lot of work and projects within the government space. So we are federally cleared, and we are innovative. And that is how Blue Fusion comes into the picture. So what is Blue Fusion? Well, you're going to get very well acquainted this afternoon. But to summarize and to give you some feelers right up front, it is efficiency. It absolutely streamlines your workflow, whether you're an investigator, an analyst, an operator, or somewhere in between. It's going to absolutely create a more efficient workflow. It's adaptable. We are agnostic on both ends, which you'll again get a better understanding for here shortly. And we're very flexible. We can grow with you and pivot with you. And it's just an amazing, innovative technology that we have patented under Blue Fusion, or Blue Light, excuse me. So today's session, I should say right now session, because this is again my 3rd session today, and I have 2 more to go after this, is addressing challenges in the commercial security and investigative units. We'll be going over a solution overview and how Blue Fusion primarily fits into an overarching enterprise solution or a mediocre, smaller solution effortlessly. I will perform a live demonstration. I'm going to cover actually 2 to 3 different use cases, kind of pivoting off of one another, just to give you a taste of the diversity that the solution can help with. And then, of course, we'll answer any questions and at the end. Now, logistically, there are 2 ways that you can communicate with me today. It is through the Q&A on Zoom, and I ask that you put any actual questions pertaining to the presentation in there. That way we can keep track of them and make sure that we answer them accordingly at the end. And then there's our chat feature, so feel free to put in any commentary, feedback. You can talk with each other in the chat. And then we're also going to be passing forward some information towards the end of the presentation, so be on the lookout for that. So before we get into any live demonstration, I really love to talk about the architecture and where Blue Fusion fits into essentially any solution that you may currently have or want to grow into. And I like to address it in these 4 layers on the left-hand side. We all have that first layer, and it's only grown over the years since I came out of the analyst realm tremendously. But that data source layer is very overwhelming at times. We have everything internally that we deal with, right? All the various data sources, data lakes, data this, that, and the other that we have internally and we own. But then there's this whole plethora of information out there on the web, OSINT information, vendors that we subscribe to get data from open source record vendors like TLO, LexisNexis, Clear. Then we have information that we may be acquiring through law enforcement realms, and that may be in unstructured formats or structured formats like Excel. So point is, there's a lot of data, and we spend entirely too much time querying, collecting, researching, consolidating, and then trying to feed that data into a platform of which we can actually conduct analysis or investigations. That is where Blue Fusion fits in. That abstraction layer that is typically and often very manual and time consuming, it fits right there in between the data source layer and the user interface layer, whatever that user face may be. Now, I told you that we were flexible, and that is because we are very agnostic on both ends of the spectrum. So we essentially build connectors directly to your data sources. So that does a couple of things for you. One, it's going to give you the most real-time access to your data. We do not replicate, duplicate, move any information. We build the connector directly to your data source. Think about all the data sources that you're currently leveraging today and how much time that it takes you to log in, query, download, sign out each individual source. I've asked several analysts over the last year, how many they often tap into, the answer is always between 10 and 15, and they spend anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes on each source. I did some math, and that's about a little over an hour per bit of data. So if I give you a cell phone and I say, give me anything and everything that you can work up on the cell phone, that's taking them about an hour to do. And that is just absurd. So again, BlueFusion builds those connectors directly to your data sources and then provides you one user interface where it simultaneously queries across those data sources. So it's going to create a very efficient and seamless workflow. So then it presents you with those results, and then you have the option to do what to do from there. You can just leverage BlueFusion as its own standalone solution, or you can opt to feed those results into the user interface layer of your choice. We are seamlessly integrated with Analyst Notebook, and that is what I will be showcasing in my demonstration today. But we are also integrated or in the talks of integrating with several other visualization platforms such as Multigo, Tableau, Siren, Kibana. I mean, name one, and we're probably already having conversations. So again, we are agnostic on the data side. We're agnostic on the user interface side. We just want to streamline that workflow and create a more efficient process of being able to put that data in front of you so you can actually conduct analysis and investigations much more fluidly. Furthermore, as a solution overarching, we also have the ability to give you a storage layer, and that provides a collaborative environment in which you can take this vetted information across these data sources through your analysis and investigations and push it to, whether you want to leverage it tomorrow, next week, next year. Historical information and intelligence is very valuable. Oftentimes it allows you to jumpstart your investigation, knowing a lot of history, or maybe individuals were looked at prior to today's investigation. So with that, I'm going to jump into a live demonstration. I will preface with live, anything and everything always likes to go awry. So bear with me. But with that said, I am going to cover an array of use cases, kind of focusing first into the cyber realm, but transitioning into a more physical security insider threat section. My goal is to show you the diversity of the solution, and it really doesn't matter what data or use case you have. The capabilities are going to be the same across the board. And if you could just maybe put on an imaginary perspective with me today and try to imagine what data you're currently leveraging and how this process may look in your environment, that would be really helpful. So again, we're going to start with cyber, turn insider, and then we're going to look at some supply chain brand protection management type of data and how that workflow may be, all while leveraging the capability of BlueFusion has to offer, being that somewhat middleware between your data and your visual link analysis platform of your choice. So again, we established those connectors, and then everything that we set up is behind your firewall. So it's on your premises. We have no access to the data. We don't sell data. We just, again, want to put you in contact with the information and create the most efficient way to query all of that data simultaneously. Now, once that's all set up as a user, it's very easy for me to be able to come in and query the data. So I have two primary ways within the BlueFusion portal to query that information. And so if you think about cyber realms, we have known malicious types of activities that we can set up. Now, SIMs are great for this when it comes to actual cyber activity, but a lot of times there's activities that fall outside of the cyber realm specifically. That might be data derived from HR, that might be data derived from badge access, that might be data derived from transactions that are happening, whatever those may be. With all of that data essentially commingling through those connectors, you can get a more robust understanding and set up queries that monitor all of those data sources simultaneously. So that's one way you may want to start. And through that, we would leverage our visual query. Now, this is my favorite way to ask a question of data, being that it's very visual in nature, hence the name. And secondly, it's very easy, not a huge learning curve. Again, we're getting out our coloring crayon and we're drawing a picture, which will end up being our question. So I'm just going to focus on some entities that I think anyone, no matter what industry or use case they might be looking at, can resonate with. So for example, my question's starting to read, find me a person that's linked to an organization as well as a phone, and that phone's connected to another phone. Now, if I have any conditions or parameters on this data, I can absolutely set them. For example, if the relationship between the phones happens to be a communication link, then I can dictate that and then set any further properties around date, time, type, duration, content, what have you. Essentially, whatever data you want to drill down on that you know your data sources that you're leveraging may have, then you can plug that in. Same with any of the entities. If I had partial information, I can plug that in as well. So if I have a descriptor of my person or actual identifiers, member ID or passport number or whatever, plug those in, and then you're going to hit search. Now, one thing's absolutely going to happen, and then after that, three things is typically going to happen when you hit search. First, it's going to hit every data source simultaneously, querying and searching through those data sources so that you don't have to go what I like to call data shopping. And then after that, one of three things is typically going to happen. First, you're going to get results. You're going to be satisfied with those results, and you're going to carry on your workflow. That's best case scenario. Second, you're going to get results. You're going to be dissatisfied with those results, and you're going to come back to this drawing board because it's very flexible and make some adjustments. You might need to be a little more vague in your query so you get more results, or a little more specific so that you get a more tailored result set. Or three, you're not going to get any results. And guess what, guys? That happens. Sometimes the data is not there, or it's not there just yet. With all of those things in mind, we wanted to give you the ability to save this query so that you can come back to it at any given time, but also saving it allows you the ability to share your efforts with your team. So if I turn this private query off, now my entire team has access to this query. They can hit the ground running. We can leverage this. But my favorite part of our saved query is turning this reoccurring query on. Essentially, that means I am hiring a virtual analyst to work for me 24 hours a day, 7 days a week at my discretion. I decide when I want this query ran next. Maybe it's at the top of my hour, and then at what interval. I can have it run as often as every hour, or as infrequent as every 24th week. So after setting my interval, I determine who within the system is going to be notified of those results when they return. Maybe Marcos and I are working on an investigation or analysis in tandem. Maybe we work on opposite sides of the country. Those are all true facts. And so when we're on different time zones and working different hours, we can help and support each other. Furthermore, if we find that we're not necessarily in the solution as often as we may want to be notified of those results, we can plug our email addresses in here, and that goes for anybody, and then we'll be notified externally so we can come in and take a look at those results. Now, by default, my query is going to hit every data source that I'm connected to, but I do have the flexibility to turn on or off data sources. So in my environment, this is what I'm connected to. I have deep web, dark web, case management, records management, Department of Motor Vehicle, and an intelligence repository. Again, think about the data sources you're already leveraging today, and that's what this list would essentially look like in your environment. So leaving those all on, again, by default, it's going to hit all of them. Now, loading the saved queries is easy as picking it from a list. So I can easily go in and leverage a saved query there. But speaking on results, or excuse me, queries and alerts, if we go into our Blue Fusion alerts, and normally this would pop up red, but I've already looked at my alerts for the day, you'll see that I have these various alerts waiting for me. And these are all, various use cases, so bear with me. However, you'll see that I am connected into my SIM system. So I have a SIM alert that comes through. Now, what's great is that the SIM does a lot of amazing things on its own, but maybe I need to take this to the next level, and I need to start incorporating other information and data to look at this cyber realm type of investigation from a different perspective. So now I can hit the ground running by taking that alert and understanding the information that pertains to it. And maybe right off the bat, let me just read all this real quick. So you can see I have 2 alerts actually that came across on my SIM, and I have 3 IP addresses that pertain to those alerts. I can look at the details of this information by just showing the record. So let's jump in there and look. So here's some of the details. I can see where the information came from, the description of the data, and that goes for any of the information here. I'll always understand where the data is coming from. But I can easily tap into all of my data sources right here from this visual environment. And maybe at first I kind of want to be wild and just explore everything. So I'm going to select everything, and then I have a couple ways that I can explore this network. I can do an expand or filtered expand. A filtered expand allows me to pick and choose what entities I want brought forth. So if I'm not interested in any like IP traffic right now, maybe I just want to look at individuals that are assigned to these IPs or usernames that are involved in these IPs, other alerts that might have been involved with any of these IPs, then, you know, I can kind of go down that rabbit hole. Or if I just want to see anything and everything, then I'm just going to hit a straight expand. And then I have another option of going out a degrees of separation. So if I want to bring back a network and actually really start analyzing a network of information, I might go out 2 degrees, and you can see it's bringing back 199 records. It's going to blow my chart up a little bit. I have everything. I have IP traffic. I have usernames that are tied to PCs. It went out again 2 degrees. So I have some personnel data that are assigned the usernames that have access to the IP. So it's really at what direction do you want to go from here? But the point being that I'm accessing, I think on this chart, at least 3 or 4 different data sources to comprise this network of information. And I was able to do that in a matter of seconds. So again, kind of reminiscing in the current path, how long it takes you to log in and out of certain systems and query and search and download and then put into a seamless interface where you can see all of those data sources layered on one another. Now, from this interface and within this solution, I can easily pivot if I wanted to go down on the IP traffic realm and understand kind of what's going on there. I can very easily grab all of my IP traffic and what it's connected to and flip it into a timeline. That's probably what I would do, and I will preface and say that I am no cyber expert. However, I am very visual and I love data and I want to understand it. So any type of transactional information that I want to see over time, boom, it's that easy to flip it into a timeline and you can see what's going on. And this is, I think, in a matter of about 12 minutes worth of activity. Now, backing up, if I didn't want to necessarily take that realm and I want to focus on the physical aspect of it, then I might want to we'll delete all those IP addresses because it's easy, again, to fluidly just go back and forth here. Redraw this chart a little bit so that we can get a little look here. And I'm actually going to remove all these kind of lead entities off to the side. So this is kind of where we started, but expanded a bit. So we have our 2 alerts, the IPs that are tied to those, and then we have some other information. So off of our IPs, we have some usernames, and then we even have some personnel information. Again, let's take a peek at the records here. So this personnel information is coming from our HR records. If I bounce up another entity, this is coming from our HR records as well. But bouncing over to our IPs, that was a consolidation of 2. So if I go to the records on this IP, actually 3, excuse me. So I have IP information on my HR records, as well as I have IP traffic and I have SIM alerts. So any data that you're looking at, you'll always understand not only where the information is coming from, but the various sources and what each source captured. So that if you need more information or you need to record or explore that information in its respective data source, then you'll always know exactly where to go. So we could continue to explore this network and get to a point where maybe we need to present our findings. In that case, for sake of time, I've kind of built out a chart that will showcase where I might want to go from there in looking at it over time. So with our usernames, and actually I'm going to stay right on this real quick. So from here, there's a lot of other information that you may have access to and you may want to incorporate, such as, you know, we have these individuals that are tapping into these IPs that are linked to these alerts. You know, what else is going on with these individuals? What other information might we have? So you might want to focus in on the other various information. So I'm just going to do another quick expand. Again, I don't care what data source, just bring me back everything by a degree of separation here. And of course I get an error because I'm trying to go over here. My point is that I have badge information, so badge access. We're talking about facilities where individuals are logging into. There's actually 2 separate facilities. And when I went down my kind of rabbit hole, if you will, I was able to put together this timeline and understand all of the activity that's going on up to the point of those alerts being generated. Now, again, SEIM does great work, and then understanding from a cyber perspective where holes and weaknesses can be to beef that up and to put measures in place is one aspect of it. But if you have someone on the inside who's creating those holes and weaknesses, then that's going to take other data points to understand. So again, being able to layer multiple data sources on top of one another to tell a holistic story, and then to be able to pivot and make key decisions and put SOPs in place to help protect yourself, your employees, your customers, whatever that may be, is key. But being able to get to that data in the most efficient way, you know, the minute a SIM alert comes in, is very important. I can tell you from experience, if I would have queried across these 4 different data sources and then came to this conclusion, it probably would have taken me an entire day. But through my ability to tap directly into data sources and flip things into timelines and look at everything in chronological order, I get a really good understanding that these 2 individuals are working co-in-hand at separate facilities, badging in, badging out, accessing areas within the facility that they shouldn't be. They're talking to each other prior to accessing specific devices, and right around the point where an alert eventually comes in, and then talking to each other postpartum, if you will. So this can be super powerful in a number of ways. Again, this is probably a multi-day investigation that was streamlined, and you could probably have done this in about 45 minutes. Really truly analyzing every aspect of the key data that is being brought in. So again, just kind of a different way to look at things, piggybacking off of cybersecurity type of alert generated information, and then exploring and leveraging other different data sources and understanding it from different perspectives. And now I'm going to completely flip heads on you. I'm going to clean this up. And we're going to look at leveraging a lot of the capabilities that I've already shown, but some added components in regards to supply chain and brand protection. All right, so now that I have a clean chart, and then I'm going to jump back into Blue Fusion. So we explored the visual query aspect and how easy it is to ask a very complex question, not a huge learning curve there. Let's pretend per se that we were alerted by law enforcement that there was a seizure of property parts, if you will, that pertain to our organization, and they sent us over some of the seizure details containing, you know, property IDs and quantities, and it looks like this information was supposed to be out of our shop, but it looks to be counterfeit. I have dealt with numerous, we'll call them commercial providers, that have challenges around counterfeit products. All of your primary and name brand applications are battling this. So this is a use case that is inspired by several of those organizations sharing their challenges and then allowing me to help address them. So with that said, if you're looking for key information that you already kind of know exists, a person, a phone number, a plate number, a seizure ID number, then you can come in and leverage the property search. It's not going to be as flexible as, say, our visual query, being able to have, 10 different entities and multiple relationships and all of the conditions, but it's more tailored again on one individual query or 1-to-1 ratio. But similar to the visual query, you can save it, your team can leverage it from no matter where they are, and you can set reoccurring queries up. So if you need to monitor a particular IP's activity, and you want to make sure that this particular type of activity doesn't happen, you might want to plug this in. Or if you need to load in an event that was sent to you with all of the information in regards to a seizure of counterfeit information, data, property, we can go ahead and plug that in. So I have my event here, which is my seizure, and then I want to look at all of the property or the parts in this manner that were associated with that seizure that was passed to us. So that information is provided to me, similar to our other query results. On the left-hand side, you're going to get a quantity and synopsis of the data that was brought back. And on the right-hand side, you're going to get a preview of all of the information. If you just want to interrogate this data, you have that full flexibility. I can look at the actual property types. So we're looking at auto parts here. Their ID, the name. If I want to see the actual record, I, again, always have that ability and I can understand what data sources they're coming from. But if I'm satisfied with my results, as we discussed earlier, and I want to carry on my workflow, and I'm a very visual person, I may want to send that to the chart so that I can see it laid out. So in the middle, of course, I'm going to have my event, and then I have all of the properties, or the parts, I should say, that are related to these events, and now I can continue to explore. So much like we shared with the cyber realm, we can do that exploration through an expand or a filtered expand. Let's go ahead and do a filtered expand and just reach out and look at any businesses. So I'm going to turn everything off. I only want to see businesses that are associated with these parts who are supposed to be shipping this information, or excuse me, shipping these parts. So I'm starting to get quite a cluster, but you can see some overlap here. So I have multiple vendors that are shipping the same parts that are all deemed counterfeit and seized by law enforcement. So from here, I may want to continue to expand just to understand any further crossover, because now I have these businesses, but do the businesses have any commonalities? A lot of times there'll be shell companies where they're make a mistake. Bad guys always make a mistake, right? Where they reference the same address or phone number or email address or any of those things. So you can start to see any like actual organized criminal activity if there were any mistakes made. So I'm just going to do an expand and go out just 1 degree, although I do have the flexibility to go out numerous degrees of separation there. And I have quite a bit of information actually coming back. So I'm going to redraw that real quick, and you'll start to see everything that's highlighted is new stuff that came back, but you can start to see the crossover. My businesses are the second layer. You can start to see some crossover and commonality across the board here. So this is really starting to get interesting. But with all this crossover, I'm going to drill back down, and I want to focus on any key clusters of information. So a more tight network of data, and just really focus and prioritize my information there. So this is a capability that Analyst Notebook offers. This find cluster is essentially looking at a network. I'm going to set my binding strength to 3, essentially meaning an entity will only be a part of this network if it has 3 connections or more into the network. And then I'm going to have the software do some work for me. So I found one cluster. This is a more tightly knit cluster of data that is, again, comprised of, we have businesses and emails and people and phones and our actual event seizure and the property that was deemed counterfeit. So I'm going to kick this into a new chart so I can focus down on this bit of data and then maybe do some expansion from here. So it's kind of a cluster, but we can clean this up just a little bit, maybe grab our businesses and have them reside at the top here while we kind of see this cluster. But what's interesting to me is that I have a phone number and email address that's referenced in at least 3 businesses that are all tied into 6 of the parts that were deemed counterfeit within this seizure. So this crossover is interesting, and I'm looking at the business names, and again, that kind of like gut feeling of, okay, let's explore this phone and email address and see what else comes back. So I'm going to do an expand. I'm actually going to go out 2 degrees just to save myself some time. Show me anything and everything that these entities are connected to. And immediately I have a ton of more data that's brought back. But let me just redraw this real quick because all right, so in regards to the phone, it's connected to this individual here, and then I got another tie by doing that 2 degree of separation. I found another tie that I wasn't necessarily aware of through an address that we didn't have on the chart yet to this person. So who in the world is this person? Well, we have some historical information on this individual, and they are related to this blacklist that is a known counterfeit organization. So obviously these are red flags. We can go ahead and establish them as so. There's lots of amazing visual components to help with your analysis of looking at this type of data. So again, a lot of red flags and interesting information. We're leveraging, I think, 6 different data points by being able to pull this together just off of an initial lead in regards to counterfeit parts that fall under, are supposed to fall under our organization. And then looking at other companies that we're doing business with that are, it looks like fabricating many of our parts. And then again, expanding upon the businesses, looking at the individuals, looking at the crossover amongst phones and addresses and other aspects of the data, we are able to see where there's ties are. And now we can start, as a corporation, we can start putting in sanctions and saying, you know what, we're not going to do business anymore with these 3 businesses. And we may want to look a little bit deeper into these other 3 that don't appear to have any direct connections with our blacklist down here, but still should do our due diligence here. Now, looking maybe at the businesses, again, historically, we may want to look into any other seizures that these businesses are related to. Maybe we want to focus on the 3 that are kind of on our radar right now that are tied to these individuals. So I can kick this into a visual query. And load that up. So these are pushed into this business name. So essentially find me any of those 3 businesses where any of their property or parts have been tied to a seizure that we may have on file. Hitting search, you'll see there are 4 seizures, including the one that we've explored today. So obviously there's a history here. Again, it just further validates some suspicious activity, and we need to understand who we're doing business with and help, because at the end of the day, again, there's two challenges here. One, we want to protect our brand, and we don't want these counterfeit this counterfeit property be putting out into the public, because it makes us look bad. So we want to help and support law enforcement from their aspect, but also we don't want to do business with any of those. And then from a supply chain management, we want to see where in the whole, and we can look at things on timelines and whatnot, and start to see from that aspect. So that essentially covers the capabilities of Blue Fusion. And I know it seems fairly straightforward, which is good, but understanding the ease and flexibility of being able to connect directly to your data sources and the amount of time that it absolutely saves you in the process, that you can come to intelligent decisions, operational decisions, brand protecting decisions, is invaluable. And again, Blue Fusion is agnostic on both ends. We want to be able to connect to the various data sources and feed whatever intelligence platform that you deem necessary in your environment. So with that, I will conclude with our connector library list. So these are connectors that we already have built in place. Although if you don't see it on the list, that doesn't mean we're not already in talks with a vendor or that we don't want to be in talks with a vendor. And then there is an array of information. So of course, there's third-party data providing vendors on here, but there's also resources and databases that often are internal, like records management or case management type of systems, HR systems, and things of that, of that nature. So our goal is to quadruple this list within the next few months and be able to provide our users the most robust connector library. And again, it's not a matter of just connecting to these data sources and then being able to query them. It's the federated query. And that is our patented technology, the no code, not having to write any code or understand any type of SQL server, anything. Being able to no code query across multiple data sources simultaneously, again, saving you a lot of time and honestly in the end, a lot of money, because on average, it only takes us approximately 2 weeks to build a connector from scratch. So there's not a lot of heavy lift. Our development team is very efficient, and therefore you're not paying for months worth of our time building and writing code.